Something incredible is happening inside Apple's labs right now, and it's not what most people expect. In an era where every smartphone launch seems to chase viral moments with foldable screens, pop-up cameras, or exaggerated claims about revolutionary features, Apple is doing something far more deliberate, far quieter, and, perhaps, far more consequential. The iPhone 18 Pro Max isn't shouting for attention. It doesn't need to. Instead, it's refining the very foundation of what a smartphone can be, not through spectacle, but through precision, through restraint, through a series of decisions so subtle they might go unnoticed at first glance, yet so intentional they could reshape how we interact with our devices for years to come. Before we dive deeper, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. We focus on thoughtful, research-backed insights into the evolving world of technology, especially the quiet shifts in design and interface that often get overlooked in the noise of flashy announcements. Your support helps us keep delivering this kind of in-depth coverage. Now, back to the iPhone 18 Pro Max. At first glance, it looks familiar. That's by design. Apple has long understood that radical change can alienate users just as easily as it excites them. So instead of reinventing the wheel, they're perfecting it, polishing every spoke until the entire mechanism spins with near-silent efficiency. The silhouette remains elegant, the materials luxurious, the proportions balanced. But look closer, really look, and you'll notice something unusual, something unprecedented in the iPhone's history. The front-facing camera and Face ID sensors, they're no longer where you'd expect them to be. For over half a decade, the iPhone's identity has been tied to that iconic notch, a compromise between screen real estate and necessary hardware. Then came the dynamic island, Apple's clever way of turning a limitation into a feature. But even that was still anchored in the center of the display, a visual anchor point that shaped how we held our phones, how apps were designed, even how we framed selfies. Now, that anchor is shifting, literally. Rumors, supply chain reports, and insider leaks all point to a bold new layout. The front-facing camera may now reside in the top left corner of the screen. Not centered, not symmetrical, off to the side, like a discrete observer, rather than a focal point. And the rest of the Face ID array, it's being pushed further beneath the display, using next-generation under-display sensor technology that's finally mature enough for mass production. This isn't just a cosmetic tweak. It's a fundamental rethinking of spatial hierarchy on the iPhone's most important surface, the screen. Why does this matter? Because where we place elements on a screen isn't just about engineering, it's about psychology. Human attention is drawn to the center. That's why filmmakers frame subjects centrally, why logos sit in the middle of packaging, and why app icons are arranged symmetrically. By moving the selfie camera away from that central axis, Apple is doing something counterintuitive. It's de-emphasizing the camera itself. The goal isn't to hide it completely. That would compromise functionality. But to make it feel less intrusive, less like a permanent fixture demanding attention. Imagine opening a full-screen video. No notch cutting into the top, no pill-shaped island floating in the middle. Just pure, uninterrupted content stretching edge to edge, with only a tiny pinhole in the corner reminding you that the hardware is still there. That shift, from center to corner, creates a psychological sense of openness. It feels less like you're looking through a device and more like you're looking into a window. And over time, that difference becomes profound. But Apple hasn't abandoned the dynamic island. In fact, they've made it smarter. The latest iteration uses advanced contextual awareness to determine when it should appear, how large it should be, and even whether it should exist at all in certain scenarios. During a movie, it vanishes entirely. On a phone call, it expands just enough to show caller info without obscuring subtitles. While using a navigation app, it subtly pulses with turn-by-turn cues, then recedes when idle. This isn't just animation. It's adaptive intelligence woven into the fabric of the interface. And here's the fascinating part. Because the camera is no longer competing for space in the center, the dynamic island can evolve independently. It's no longer tethered to hardware constraints. That freedom allows Apple to treat it not as a static component, but as a living element of the UI, one that breathes with your usage patterns. Over weeks of use, you might not even notice it's there until you need it. And then, like magic, it appears exactly when and how you expect it to. That's the hallmark of great design. Invisible until necessary, intuitive once present. Now, let's talk about color, because even here, Apple is making quiet statements. Gone are the bright, playful hues of earlier generations. The iPhone 18 Pro Max leans into depth, maturity, and craftsmanship. Think deep burgundy that shifts in different lighting, almost like aged leather. Or a matte brown inspired by luxury watch straps, rich with texture and warmth. There's also a new shade of purple, not the vibrant violet of past models, but something more refined, closer to the patina of titanium or the sheen of polished amethyst. These aren't just colors, they're signals. They tell you this device isn't meant to stand out in a crowd through flashiness, but through presence, through subtlety. This approach reflects a broader shift in consumer tech. As smartphones become more ubiquitous, personalization moves away from loud aesthetics and toward understated distinction. You don't need a neon green phone to express individuality anymore. You do it through choice. Choosing a finish that feels personal, that ages gracefully, that doesn't scream but whispers confidence. Apple understands this, and with the iPhone 18 Pro Max, they're catering to users who value discretion over drama. But where the iPhone truly steps into the future isn't on the outside, it's behind the lens. The camera system on the Pro Max model is undergoing one of its most significant evolutions since the introduction of night mode. For years, computational photography has carried the burden of image quality, using software to simulate effects that optical hardware couldn't achieve alone. Depth maps, portrait blur, HDR blending, all brilliant but ultimately approximations. With the iPhone 18 Pro Max, Apple is bringing physics back into the equation. How? Through variable aperture lenses. Yes, you read that correctly. The main and telephoto lenses on the Pro Max are rumored to feature mechanical iris systems. Tiny, precision-engineered diaphragms that can physically open and close, just like in a high-end DSLR or the human eye. This means the phone can adjust how much light enters the sensor in real time, based on scene conditions. In bright daylight, the aperture narrows to increase depth of field and reduce glare. At night, it opens wide to gather every possible photon, resulting in cleaner, brighter low-light shots without excessive digital noise. More importantly, this enables true optical bokeh, the kind that feels organic, not algorithmically stitched. Background blur becomes a function of physics, not post-processing. Edges stay natural, highlights bloom softly. Subjects pop without looking unnaturally cut out. For portrait photographers, this is a game changer. It bridges the gap between smartphone convenience and professional-grade realism. And because this is Apple, the integration goes beyond hardware. The A20 Pro chip, built on a cutting-edge 2nm process, coordinates seamlessly with the optical system. It doesn't just capture images, it anticipates them. Before you even press the shutter, the system analyzes lighting, subject movement, and depth layers to pre-adjust the aperture, ISO, and exposure. The result? Photos that feel less like snapshots and more like moments preserved with intention. Speaking of the A20 Pro chip, let's take a moment to appreciate what this represents. Moving from 30nm to 2nm isn't just a number. It's a leap in transistor density, power efficiency, and thermal management. Apple's engineers have managed to squeeze more performance out of less silicon, which means the iPhone 18 Pro Max can run complex tasks, like real-time video rendering, AI-enhanced photo editing, or augmented reality overlays, without heating up or draining the battery prematurely. In fact, despite the added capabilities, battery life is expected to improve, not degrade. Part of that efficiency comes from another quiet revolution, Apple's in-house C2 modem. After years of relying on external suppliers for cellular connectivity, Apple is finally taking full control of the radio stack. The C2 modem isn't just faster, it's smarter. It dynamically switches between frequency bands, optimizes signal strength based on location, and even reduces power consumption during idle states. More importantly, it lays the groundwork for deeper integration with satellite networks. Satellite connectivity. Once a niche emergency feature limited to SOS calls, it's now poised to become a core part of the iPhone experience. The iPhone 18 Pro Max is expected to support two-way satellite messaging, not just for emergencies, but for everyday communication in areas with no cellular coverage. Hikers, travelers, remote workers. Anyone outside urban centers could stay connected without needing specialized gear. And Apple is reportedly working with global satellite providers to ensure seamless handoffs between terrestrial and orbital networks. But the real ambition lies beyond messaging. Imagine downloading maps, receiving weather updates, or even streaming low-bandwidth audio directly via satellite. None of this requires cell towers. None of it depends on local infrastructure. It's a vision of truly universal connectivity, one where your phone works anywhere on Earth, not just where carriers have built towers. That's not just convenient, it's transformative, and it's happening not with fanfare, but with firmware updates and background optimizations that most users won't even notice until they find themselves sending a text from the middle of the desert. This is Apple's genius, embedding massive technological leaps within experiences that feel effortless. You don't need to understand nanometer processes or radio frequencies to benefit from them. You just pick up your phone, and it works. Better, smoother, more reliably than before. The complexity is hidden, the simplicity is celebrated. Consider how this philosophy extends to everyday interactions. Scrolling through social media feels fluid, not because of raw speed alone, but because animations are tuned to match human perception thresholds. Typing feels responsive because haptic feedback is calibrated to mimic the tactile sensation of physical keys, without actual moving parts. Even charging has been refined. The new MagSafe system aligns more precisely, transfers power more efficiently, and generates less heat, thanks to improved magnetic arrays and thermal shielding. Every detail serves a purpose. Every change answers a question users didn't know they had. And that's what makes the iPhone 18 Pro Max so compelling. It's not trying to impress you with specs on a spec sheet. It's trying to disappear into your life. To become so intuitive, so reliable, so unobtrusive that you forget you're using a machine at all. Of course, none of this happens in a vacuum. Apple's decisions are shaped by years of user behavior data, ergonomic studies, and material science breakthroughs. The corner-placed camera, for instance, wasn't chosen randomly. Heat mapping studies show that users rarely cover the top left corner with their fingers during normal use, unlike the center, which often gets obscured during landscape video playback or gaming. Placing the camera there minimizes occlusion while maximizing screen clarity. Similarly, the move toward darker, richer colors isn't just aesthetic, it's practical. Darker finishes hide micro scratches better. Matte textures resist fingerprints. Titanium frames, which are likely returning in a refined form, offer strength without weight. These choices reflect a deep understanding of how people actually live with their devices, not in sterile labs, but in pockets, bags, and hands that sweat, drop, and fumble. And let's not overlook the emotional dimension. Technology isn't just functional, it's relational. We form attachments to our devices. We rely on them for connection, creativity, comfort. Apple knows this. That's why the iPhone 18 Pro Max feels less like a tool and more like a companion. Its refinements aren't cold or clinical. They're human-centered. The variable aperture mimics how our eyes see. The adaptive UI responds like a thoughtful assistant. The color palette evokes warmth and permanence, not disposability. In a market saturated with more megapixels, more RAM, more gimmicks, Apple is betting on better integration, better balance, better daily experience. And history suggests they're often right. Remember when everyone mocked the removal of the headphone jack, or criticized the notch as ugly? Those decisions, once controversial, became industry standards. Why? Because they served a larger vision, one where hardware and software coalesce into something greater than the sum of their parts. The iPhone 18 Pro Max continues that legacy. It doesn't seek to disrupt for disruption's sake. It seeks to refine, to elevate, to anticipate. It asks, what if the biggest innovation isn't a new feature, but the absence of friction? What if progress isn't measured in headlines, but in moments of quiet satisfaction? A photo that captures exactly how you remembered it. A screen that feels boundless. A phone that just works. That's the quiet revolution unfolding inside Apple's labs. And it's already shaping the future of mobile computing. So now, we turn the question back to you. Would you embrace a front camera, shifted to the corner for the sake of a cleaner, more immersive display? Or do you find comfort in the centered symmetry you've grown used to over the years? Do these subtle refinements, the richer colors, the adaptive interface, the mechanical aperture, excite you more than flashy, headline-grabbing novelties? Or do you wish Apple would take a bolder, more visible risk? Your perspective matters. Because technology isn't just shaped by engineers in Cupertino, it's shaped by how we, as users, respond to it. By what we adopt, what we reject, what we demand. So share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you value most in a smartphone: innovation that shouts, or innovation that listens. And if you found this deep dive insightful, Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. We'll continue exploring the nuanced, often overlooked shifts in tech that quietly redefine our digital lives. No hype, no fluff, just clear, thoughtful analysis. Until next time, thanks for watching.